Welcome back, everybody, to another video. It's me. Join me and my partner, Jonathan, as we explore abandoned, hidden, and forgotten places. And today, we're at an infamous location that has quite the eerie reputation. It's actually known as the Hollow Hills Asylum. But before we go any further into the video, please hit that like button and subscribe if you aren't already. We would really appreciate that. Thank you. So the story behind this place is a bit strange. Apparently, 50 years ago, this place was abruptly shut down for unknown reasons, and all of the patients that lived here mysteriously vanished without a trace. Nobody knows what happened to them or where they went. Some say they were taken away in the middle of the night, and some say they're still trapped within these four walls to this very day. I'm standing in front of the asylum right now, and it's quite a large building. It's definitely creepy and foreboding, but not nearly as creepy as it was back in the 1950s, when people were actually afraid to come near this place because they believed it was haunted. The scariest part about this whole situation is that none of the records from this place have ever been found. So we don't know the names of the patients that lived here or what happened to them. All we know is that one day they were here, and the next day they were gone. Alright, so I think we're going to go up to the front door and try to get inside. See what secrets lie hidden within this abandoned mental asylum. That's right, folks. This is an abandoned mental asylum. What could possibly be hiding inside this place? What kind of experiments could have been conducted here? Why did the government abandon it 50 years ago? Well, I guess the only way to find out is to go inside. So, let's do it. But before we go inside, I want to speak to you directly and ask you to do me a favor. This is Eleanor speaking. If this turns out to be my last report, then maybe someday, somehow, some way, somebody might hear it. Okay, I need you to know that whatever happens in here, whatever I find in here, please keep my research alive. Please share it with the world. Okay, I believe that there are things in this world that we aren't supposed to know about. Things that we can't explain. And I'm about to enter a place that's literally been abandoned for decades. So, if you could just promise me that you'll share my research, I would really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and walk through the door now. It's getting dark outside, so it's probably not gonna be too good to see inside. But yeah, I'm walking through the door now. Okay, so I've stepped inside and I'm immediately met with darkness. I don't know if you can see, but it's pitch black inside here. Jonathan, where are you at? Hello? Jonathan, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna walk a little further in. Maybe there's a light switch around here somewhere. I can't see anything. I don't even know if my flashlight's gonna work. Okay, I found a light switch. Hopefully the lights turn on. Hello? Jonathan, are you there? I'm getting a little scared. Okay, so the only other thing I see besides darkness is, oh no, a big spider web. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm sorry, guys. I can't do this. Jonathan, come help me. Jonathan, are you almost there? I'm scared. I don't see you. I'm spinning around in circles. I think I'm lost. Oh my God. Jonathan, I'm really scared right now. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if this place is haunted. I don't know what's out here. Jonathan, please come help me. Please come help me. Thank you for watching. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. She switched on her flashlight and stepped through the door. The heavy velvet curtains provided just enough light for her to see that the hall was deserted. She shone her light around, taking in the peeling wallpaper and threadbare carpet. But what really caught her attention were the walls lined with old black and white photographs. In each one, the patient stared vacantly into the middle distance. But it wasn't their blank eyes that unsettled Eleanor. It was the fact that in every picture, the patients weren't looking at the camera. They were looking directly into their eyes. Behind her, Jonathan turned on the camera and began filming. He tried to sound casual, but his voice trembled slightly. "Do you think these pictures are following us?" he said, his eyes darting from the photographs to the door behind him. Eleanor nodded slowly, mesmerized by the whispering voice in her recorder. "I think they're trying to tell us something," she whispered back, her eyes fixed on the photos. At that moment, a gust of wind slammed a door shut at the far end of the corridor. They both jumped, and Eleanor quickly shone her light in the direction of the noise. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jonathan nodded, shivering. "Yes, but it's probably just the wind," he said, attempting to sound brave. But even as he spoke, another gust of wind rattled the windows at the end of the corridor, and he pulled his jacket tighter around him. Then, out of nowhere, the whisper that had been playing softly in Eleanor's recorder suddenly echoed directly from the walls of the corridor. "You should not have come," it hissed. "This place is alive." Eleanor quickly switched the recorder off, but the whisper didn't stop. It continued to echo around them, growing louder and more menacing with every passing second. "This place is alive!" it hissed again. "This place is alive!" Eleanor backed away from the wall, her heart pounding in her chest. As she did so, an old file fell to the ground at her feet. She picked it up and opened it. The pages were brittle and yellowed with age, but the cover was crisp and clearly marked. Patient number 47, it read. Subject, Eleanor Gray. Jonathan's camera slipped from his numb fingers and clattered to the floor. "Ellie," he breathed. "That's your name." Eleanor stared at the file in her hands, her mind racing. What was this place? What was it doing here? And why was it showing her these pictures? Suddenly, she remembered the purpose of their visit. This place was supposed to be empty. All the files had been removed years ago. So, why was she still here? And why did it know her name? As if to answer her question, the voice in the room suddenly boomed, "You are not supposed to be here. Leave now before it's too late." Eleanor and Jonathan looked at each other, their eyes wide with fear. Eleanor wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stay in that room. But her legs felt heavy, as if anchored to the spot. The voice continued to echo around them, growing louder and more menacing with every passing second. "Leave now before it's too late," it hissed. "It's too late. It's too late." Just then, a gust of wind slammed the door behind them open. Flashes of lightning illuminated the darkness beyond, revealing an empty corridor. The heavy curtains had been blown aside, allowing a sliver of moonlight to illuminate a single word scrawled on the wall in what looked like fresh paint. "Run." Eleanor and Jonathan didn't need to be told twice. They turned and ran, stumbling over one another in their haste to escape. They could hear the voice behind them, growing louder and more desperate. "Run!" it screamed. "Run, Ellie, run!" They burst through the door into the night, collapsing onto the grass in front of it. Gasping for breath, they looked back at the house, its windows blazing with an eerie, otherworldly light. As quickly as it had started, the light vanished and the house was plunged into darkness. Silence descended, broken only by the sound of their own pounding hearts. Trembling, they made their way back to the car, not daring to look back. As they drove away, Jonathan glanced at the passenger seat beside him. The file was still there, its cover clearly marked, Patient number 47, Subject, Eleanor Gray. He turned to Eleanor, his face pale in the dim light. "What are we gonna do?" he whispered. Eleanor looked back at him, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," she whispered back. "I don't know." Eleanor and Jonathan stood frozen in the middle of the deserted hall, its vast emptiness pressing in on them like the suffocating grip of some unseen entity. All around them, dust motes danced in the pale moonlight filtering through grimy windows high above. The silence was thick with anticipation, broken only by the distant drip, drip, drip of a leaky pipe somewhere in the shadows. Then from the darkness at the far end of the hall, they heard the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing like a death knell in the oppressive stillness. They came closer, growing louder, accompanied by the rustle of fabric and the clank of metal on metal. Eleanor and Jonathan instinctively clung to each other, their eyes wide with terror as the specter of the approaching footsteps drew ever nearer. And then she stepped into the dim light, or rather emerged from the light, for she seemed to have been there all along, an unseen presence made manifest. Tall and gaunt, with a shock of white hair framing a face like a skull, she moved with an eerie grace that sent shivers down their spines. Her eyes, two burning embers in the gloom, seemed to pierce through their disguises, dissecting their souls and laying them bare. Her lips, thin and bloodless, curled into a smile that was both sad and terrifying. "Who are you?" Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Why are you still here? This asylum was shut down years ago," Jonathan added, his bravado failing in the face of her unearthly calm. The woman paused, regarding them with an unfathomable gaze. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, she spoke. Her voice was like the rustling of dead leaves, dry and brittle, yet somehow resonant with an ancient power that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "This place was never shut down," she said, her eyes flickering to the windows behind them, as if seeing not glass and stone, but something beyond, something only she could perceive. "The world simply forgot us." She turned back to them, her smile widening, and in that instant, Eleanor saw not a human being, but a specter from another realm, a conduit between worlds, a messenger from the grave. Suddenly, the corridor lights flickered and died one by one until only an emergency exit sign blazed with an eerie green glow, casting long, grotesque shadows that writhed and twisted on the walls like tormented souls. The air grew heavy, charged with a palpable energy that made the hair on Eleanor's arms stand on end. She watched in fascination as the woman raised her hand, and with a gesture as old as time, the shadows on the walls began to dance and swirl, coalescing into the forms of emaciated men and women whose eyes burned with an otherworldly fire. For a moment, Eleanor felt a strange sense of connection with them, as if she had once been one of them, trapped within these four walls, lost to the darkness. Then the woman turned, and with a voice that echoed with 1,000 unspoken horrors, beckoned them forward. "Come with me," she said. "It's time you face the truth." Terror momentarily, curiosity flickered in Eleanor's eyes. What truth? What had happened here all those years ago? And what did it have to do with her? Before Jonathan could stop her, she had stepped past him. Her gaze locked on the dancing shadows and followed the woman deeper into the labyrinth of darkness. He watched in horror as the door to the corridor slid shut, sealing their fate and plunging them into absolute blackness. Then he was left alone in the hall, with only the whispers of the wind and the ghosts of the damned for company. In the depths of the asylum, hidden from the prying eyes of the world, Eleanor found herself in a vast, echoing chamber. Dust motes swirled in the dim light filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows, illuminating rows upon rows of rusted gurneys lined up like silent sentinels. On each gurney lay a file, bound in leather and stamped with a serial number. Curiosity, morbid yet irresistible, compelled Eleanor to approach them. As she reached out to touch one of the files, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut, plunging the room into darkness. Panic seized her. Where was Jonathan? Had he followed her? Was he out there somewhere in the darkness, trapped with her in this forsaken place? Or had he fled, abandoning her to her fate? Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a flicker of movement, a fleeting glimpse of a white-coated figure disappearing behind one of the gurneys. With renewed determination, she stumbled forward, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. As she rounded the gurney, the file slipped from her numb fingers and fell open at random, revealing a single sheet of paper. In shaky handwriting, it detailed the experiments performed on the patients, the drugs they were forced to take, the tortures they were subjected to in the name of progress, and the cure for madness. But it was the photographs that truly chilled her to the bone. Images of emaciated men and women, their eyes wide with terror, their bodies contorted in pain, branded with searing hot irons, strapped to tables, injected with mysterious substances. And in the center of it all, the smiling face of a man she recognized with a start, a man who looked disturbingly like her father. The last thing Eleanor remembered was the searing pain in her leg, the sickening crunch of bone on bone. Then nothing. Now she was here, strapped to a cold steel table in a dark, dank room with only a flickering gas lamp overhead for light. And she wasn't alone. Across the room, slumped in a chair, was a man she recognized as Jonathan, her boyfriend. He looked up at her, his face ashen, eyes wide with terror. Then they both turned to look at the woman who entered the room, her silhouette framed in the doorway. Her name was Dr. Victoria Crow, and she was the head doctor of this institution. Well, at least she used to be. "Dr. Crow," Eleanor croaked, her throat hoarse from disuse. "Why am I here? What happened?" Dr. Crow didn't answer. Instead, she walked slowly toward them, her footsteps echoing in the vast space like the dragging of metal moans. When she was close enough, the flickering gaslight revealed the manicured perfection of her face, the cruel set of her mouth, the cold gleam of her eyes. Then she did something that made Eleanor's blood run cold. Dr. Crow smiled. It was a smile that promised pain, a smile that held no warmth. Eleanor struggled against her bonds. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice echoing strangely in the big room. "Let us go," Jonathan said weakly. Dr. Crow stopped and turned to him. Her smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed a little too sharp, a little too long. "You want to know what happened? Why you're here?" she asked softly. Then she leaned closer to Eleanor, her breath smelling faintly of copper and decay. "I think it's time you were told the truth." She turned away and beckoned with a gloved hand. "Come with me." Eleanor and Jonathan stood in shock. Dr. Victoria Crow slowly advanced toward them. Her footsteps echoed through the desolate hall. Gathering her courage, Eleanor asked, "What is all this? Why are you still here? This asylum was shut down years ago." Dr. Crow stopped and turned to face them, her eyes glowing with a sinister red in the dim light. "This place was never shut down," she said softly, her voice like ice shards on a winter wind. "The rest of the world simply forgot us." She raised her hand. Suddenly, the corridor lights flickered and one by one blazed back on. The shadows on the walls writhed as though dozens of tormented souls were clawing to escape their confines. Dr. Crow opened a door and said, "Come with me. It's time you saw the truth." Jonathan clutched Eleanor's hand, his voice a panicked whisper. "Ellie, she's insane. We need to get out of here." But Eleanor, her curiosity overriding her fear, stepped inside. It was a vast room, its walls lined with shelves holding countless patient files. Each file was stained with what looked like blood, the edges crumbling as if long neglected. Dr. Crow walked to a shelf and pulled out a file, her gloved hand leaving bloody smudges on the dusty surface. "Here," she said, turning it toward Eleanor. On the cover, scrawled in a shaky hand, were the words, "Patient number 15," and below it, in a more professional hand, the words, "Diagnosis severe hallucinations, believes she is a journalist." The blood drained from Jonathan's face. This is your name, Eleanor. It's all written about you." Dr. Crow took the file from Eleanor and turned back to the wall, her shoulders shaking slightly. "Of course it is," she said, her voice hollow, empty. "That was our greatest failure, you see, to cure patient 47, but now it seems she's returned to us. How convenient." She turned, her eyes gleaming with a cold fire. "You are a prisoner, Eleanor, and this has always been your home." With a sudden, terrifying swiftness, the heavy door slammed shut. Trapped in the room, Eleanor felt a surge of panic. All those years of therapy, of trying to forget the horrors of Willow Creek Sanitarium. For nothing. She was back here, labeled Patient 47. Her past self, the girl who thought she was a journalist, returned. And the head doctor, Dr. Victoria Crow, seemed to know her better than she knew herself. Or perhaps this was all just a cruel joke, a test of some kind. But who was the joke for? Eleanor or the grinning, maniacal doctor? The room's lights began flickering rapidly. Eleanor's breath grew shallow. Whispering voices echoed in her ears. "You are a prisoner. You will never leave this place. You are a prisoner. You will never leave this place." Eleanor rushed to the door and pounded on it frantically. "Let me out! Let me out!" she screamed, but it wouldn't budge. She turned slowly to face the source of the whispering. On the walls, the faces in the patient photographs started to move. They were alive. They glared at Eleanor with eyes of pure hatred. One of them lunged toward her, reaching out a hand that ended in a gruesome parody of a smile. "See the truth," rasped a familiar voice. Startled, Eleanor turned. Standing before her was Dr. Crow, the asylum's director. His expression was grave, eyes boring into hers. "Don't believe him?" she mouthed, turning back to the wall just in time to see another photograph fall. The smiling face now contorted in silent screams. Dr. Crow stepped closer, his smile widening. "Look into the mirror," he commanded, pointing towards something behind Eleanor. Trembling, she touched the cool glass. It was fogged over. Taking a deep breath, she tried to peer through it. Then she screamed. The reflection staring back was not Eleanor Gray, the journalist. No, it was a patient, eyes wild with terror, lips mumbling the same words again and again. "I'm a journalist! I'm a journalist!" She stumbled back from the mirror, knocking over a nearby chair. "Eleanor!" A voice broke through her terror, a beacon in the darkness. Jonathan. Her boyfriend Jonathan stood framed in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "Ellie, what's going on? Are you okay?" Relief flooded her. He was here. Of course he was. This was real. None of this was real. "Help me," she whispered, rushing toward him. But as she reached out for him, Jonathan seemed to fade, his form slipping through her fingers like sand. Panic seized her. "No, don't leave. Don't leave me. Please come back." She cried out, reaching for him, but he was gone. Then she felt it, a sharp prick in her arm, and everything went black. When Eleanor awoke, the room was empty. Groaning, she sat up, the events from the night before crashing over her. Where was Jonathan? Where was Dr. Crow? Then she noticed the wall. Etched into it were the same words she had seen in the mirror. "I'm a journalist. I'm a journalist." Had she said them out loud? Had she really become a patient? Her gaze fell on the bed beside her. Laying there was a notebook and a pen. Hesitantly, she opened it. The pages were filled with writing, spidery and frantic. "I must get out. Jonathan will find me. I am not a patient. I am a journalist. I am not a patient. I am a journalist." Each word a desperate plea against the encroaching madness. Was this her own writing? Why did she feel as though she was losing her mind? A sudden bang echoed through the room, sending a fresh wave of panic through her. The door. Someone was outside. Pounding on it, Jonathan's voice cut through the wood. "Ellie, please let me in. Ellie, I'm here to help you. I promise." Hope surged through her. He had found her. She wanted to call out, to tell him she was here, but no sound came out. All she could do was watch as the door began to open. A head popped through the gap, a man's. His eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, hello. I was just checking the rooms. You okay?" The man stammered, clearly uncomfortable being in there alone with a clearly disturbed woman who hadn't moved a muscle during his entire speech. He cleared his throat. "Well, if you need anything, just let me know. We got a new patient in the room down the hall. Say, you wouldn't happen to be interested in making a friend, would you? You know, someone around your age? Haha. Very funny, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, if you need anything, just holler." The man retreated back down the hallway. Eleanor slumped back against the bed, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a journalist. I'm a journalist," she whispered, her voice hoarse. That afternoon, the local police found an old camera at the asylum's gate. Its last recording was dated 2 days prior. The screen flickered to life, showing a young woman holding the camera close. Her eyes were wide and fearful. If anyone is hearing this, please believe me, this place is still alive. And I have become a part of it. The screen went black.